I had a hobby too. Mine happened to be guns and ballistics, and I studied guns and ballistics as much as I could, and I wrote an article about high velocity.
So out of all my years working at Weatherby, the last 5 have been some of the most exciting. Working with Adam, with him running the company.
And to think that I get the opportunity of carrying on my grandfather's legacy 75 years later here in Sheridan, Wyoming, I mean, it really is a dream come true.
Oh, I'm home. Thank God I'm home.
On Our Mark, the Weatherby Podcast.
All right, On Our Mark, the Weatherby Podcast. We're talking about Adam's nemesis species today, moose hunting. We are both on the heels, all three of us, Brenda's here, on the heels of a really cool moose hunt. But I say it's your nemesis, Adam. How many days have you spent moose hunting now?
I don't know, over 20. I did, in 2016, went to British Columbia, tried to get a Canadian moose, and I had an elk tag on that hunt too. I did tag an elk, but did not have a chance to pull a trigger on a bull. Saw one legal bull the first night, small one for a few minutes, and that was the only bull we'd seen.
That was it.
And that's the thing about moose hunting. People think, oh, they're real big. You just go up there and they're everywhere. But talked to a lot of people that end up getting skunked. I didn't know that, so I thought I was the only bad moose hunter in the world. So I came back, and then they'd be like, oh, I can't believe you didn't get a moose. It's so easy to get a moose. And I'm like, come on. So then in 18, I got invited by a friend who's an Alaskan resident and went to Alaska, pursuit of Alaskan moose, hunted over a week there. Same situation, saw one bull one day. He was running at 700 yards chasing a cow, ran into the trees, never saw him again, never saw another bull.
Oh, man, that's brutal. Just it's a lot of waiting, moose hunting. It's a patient game.
Yes.
And you said that one. I remember him coming home from that one, and he was telling me the stories, and I thought, I don't know if I'm a moose hunter the way that went with all of the weather that you...
We just sat in the rain and waited for moose, called moose, and told stories, played cards, and didn't work out that well. We had a good time.
It's still having fun.
We had a great time.
For sure.
So what made it fun is that it's not like I just went on one moose hunt. I did have to go on 3. And so when we got invited here, probably, the 3 of us over a year ago, from an industry partner of ours that invited the 3 of us on a moose hunt, I was like, I knew it was either third time's a charm or 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah,
and I knew
this will be the last.
I kind of
one.
almost felt like if I didn't tag a moose, I'd just move on.
Right.
But as you'll find out in this podcast, it was third time's a charm.
Yep. So we got invited to go, all of us together, share camp with one of our industry friends and suppliers. So even that took a bit of a turn because of COVID. We almost called the trip off, 2 weeks before the trip was supposed to happen. So beginning of September, we're not sure how this is going to go down. And our partner calls us. Bob's like, don't know how this is going to work out. This might not work. We're not going to be able to share camp. Long story short, can't get enough fuel for 4 people to get far enough up the river. And so we're going to have to split up because of the village couldn't get, it was on rationing fuel supply, which is crazy.
It wouldn't let people in. And I remember when I saw the Alaskan number and I knew it was the outfitter a few weeks before the trip, I looked at it and said, I don't want to answer that. With the COVID year stuff, I'm like, no. But then they repositioned us. It was a unique hunt too in that I had drawn a tag. Because that's what I do.
He's lucky.
Yeah.
And so I drew a tag that's supposedly in a different unit as the rest of y'all,
Correct.
you 3.
Correct.
And so that made it a little bit more difficult, too. I had that tag, and we were going to kind of try to hunt on the border of that, but that got more complicated, too, as we couldn't take the charter plane into the village that we were going to go to due to COVID restrictions.
Right.
So, yeah.
Man, so it almost got called off, and we decided, nope, we're doing this. Well, really, I should say Bob decided because it was kind of his call. We're his guests, which was kind of a different setup for us because we're typically the ones hosting something like that. So Bob's like, no, let's do it. So we went and did it, and it was kind of 2 separate camps, but we were on the in-reach back and forth quite a bit and trying to text back and forth. So
we didn't even get to fly together because you got called out a few days earlier. And so, like, we never even saw you or Bob in Alaska.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's unique because we had two very different hunt experiences.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were more water-based, and we were in a little more mountainous area. We were about 50 miles south of Fairbanks in the Alaska Range, really just kind of on the edge of the Alaska Range, hunting the flats that lead up where the moose kind of feed up into the mountains to rut. But
The only way we got elevation was Brenda's guide would climb a tree. That's the only way. So when you were talking about mountains, it was river and trees, grasslands, lakes. So if you wanted to get high, you'd climb a tree. That was it, period.
No, so ours was every morning we would basically just go up to the glassing spot in an Argo, which those things are amazing machines, but not built for any kind of comfort. Slow, go up anything, but we'd go up in the Argo. It's like 30 minutes, and then we would just glass sometimes the whole day, looking hopefully for 2 moose because they'd want to see one and maybe a second one, so that if you didn't find the first one, you'd have a shot at finding the second one. But we're overlooking miles and miles and miles. And that was pretty much what we did for the first 7 days.
Yeah, what was ours like, Brad?
We would pull up to an area, kind of like a little beach on the river, get out, walk maybe 200 yards or 400 yards into a kind of clearing, and then we'd sit and wait and call and listen. So we weren't looking, we were really just listening.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we had our hands on our head like this, and we just kind of looked at the ground and just listened. Then if we heard something, then we would
Then you're trying to locate.
look. Yeah.
So we do, depending, probably 3 to 8 places a day
Yeah.
up and down the river.
Wow.
So we'd maybe go one of the areas we went to was over an hour to get to that area in the boat every day from our camp. So we were in wall tents on the river, miles away from any civilization or village. And then sometimes we'd head upriver as close as 10 to 15 minutes to the first spot. The other direction, it was like an hour to the first spot.
Oh, wow.
To maintain the public land and all those kind
Sure.
of things where we were. There's a lot of place that call it native allotment. You'll see on the map in different places we could and couldn't hunt. But so yeah, we'd go do that
And scan the beaches on the way there and back.
we did see some moose. We did see one legal bull once come down, to water when we were driving by in the boat. So he had 4 brow tines, but wasn't 50 inches. So if you don't know, as a non-resident in Alaska hunting where we hunted, to be a legal bull, it had to be either 50 inches wide or a minimum of 4 brow tines on one side.
Yep.
And so we.
Sometimes it's hard to estimate 50 inches. So it seems like they don't tell you to shoot unless it's 55 or over.
Yeah, unless it's like either a monster or has the 4 brow tines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe like the guides that we were with, they seemed very confident, or the guy I was with anyway, he was very confident in saying, oh, that's a shooter or not a shooter. But sometimes it's even hard to count the brow tines, even when you're somewhat close, because there's so much going on a moose. They may have 3 actual brow tines and another tine that comes right off the paddle that looks like a 4th brow tine.
But it's got to be front of that paddle in order to count as the brow tine.
For sure. So
yeah.
it could be, I've learned so much in that, just my first and only moose hunt. But man, what I learned the most was, I think, how much patience it takes.
Yep.
And I had no idea what to expect, but elk, you bugle, they're typically going to respond pretty quick if it's the right time of year. We went out, I guess it was, we glassed the whole first day. The second day we went out and we had identified where 2 were roughly, and we started to rake a tree. It had to be the right willow tree with the right amount of leaves. He was very selective on what tree to rake.
Oh.
And then we just stood there. And
Ours wasn't at all.
No, we just raked everything.
Oh, you just raked everything?
everything.
Oh, really? So, so
How
we
fun.
were very selective. He's like, gotta have the right amount of leaves, and so it sounds just right. And then he would look at his watch, and no joke, we would wait for 10 minutes. And the first couple times, I'm just like, did he fall asleep? What are we gonna do now? And then sometimes he would go, make that grunt, and then we'd wait another 10 minutes. And sometimes a moose might respond, and sometimes they wouldn't. And it wasn't until we actively saw a moose and did this whole charade, and you could just witness the moose just stands there, He's watching us. Like, we can see him 200 yards away, and he just doesn't move for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They're not in a hurry typically.
No.
Yeah.
They're real
Unbelievable.
happy up there.
It's so if you guys are going in completely blind, don't even know if there's a moose there or not.
Oh
and
yeah,
you're
we'd
just
wait.
like,
We'd wait a lot longer than that. So day 6, we sat over a field where we thought there was a big bull by that'd been spotted nearby there. So day 6, I sat 12 hours on one field.
wow,
Yeah,
just waiting,
12 hours.
calling every once in a while, or just sitting there.
Not too often. There was a cow out there, and in the morning there was a cow and a really, really small non-legal bull. So we would call, but you just don't want to overcall either. And I don't know if you guys experienced that.
That's what
So-
JD was my
Yeah.
guide's name, and he was
Yeah.
like, "You don't want to overcall, because that's not
Sure.
what moose
Did you
do.
guys
They're
cow?
very
Did you guys
patient.
cow call a lot?
No, never, not one time,
You didn't cow call?
not once.
You're kidding.
Weird.
Huh. Do you want to hear my cow call?
Yeah, I do. I think you should do
We're
it.
in the office.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Hold on, I didn't pull my mic back.
Yeah, it's going to get a little loud.
It's pretty good.
That is really good. That's really good.
Thanks, guys.
We didn't get to do that one at all.
Is everybody looking out there?
Yeah, everybody's probably looking in.
We're
in a
outside the sales marketing department.
we're in a small conference room that we use for this podcast room, and yeah, that one probably just echoed all the way through the office. That's great.
Yeah. So, we'd cow call not all that often, but if there were cows around, and in some cases we would. I mean, the raking usually worked best.
Sure, that's what we were doing the most.
Did you guys use the oil can?
Yeah, Castrol, a white Castrol GTX bottle.
It's got to be Castrol.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they take the oil bottle, a quart of oil, picture chopping it in half or maybe a little longer. I'd say
Yeah,
2/3.
like
You
cut-
just chop
cut
the bottom off.
Yeah, cut the bottom off.
And then you take a stick and you whittle it down with a knife.
Yeah, literally not a broom handle, an actual like stick from the woods.
Oh, willow.
And then you stick that in the oil can.
Yep, the opening, the lid.
Then you scrape it on the willows, and all the big bowls come.
Yeah.
And the little bulls.
That was it.
And the little bowls do too. Yeah. So
I asked JD about why white, and he said because they can wave it around and it'll look like a moose paddle to a moose.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
worked.
Ours was snowmobile.
worked.
Ours was snowmobile oil. I don't know about yours. So
It was so faded. Who knows what it was. I
Yeah.
just know that the Castrol is the white GTX, oil 10W30.
right.
No,
Yeah.
it completely worked. But man, they're so patient.
Yeah.
They're crazy animals.
Yeah.
Huge animals.
Yeah. Giant. Absolutely giant.
So what day you shot one on day
7.
7?
And no, you shot yours ahead of mine.
Yes.
But yours was day 7 or day 8.
Day 8. My day 8, but we started 2 days before you.
That's right. So
Yeah.
you shot yours a day or two before mine.
We were on that kind of flats
So
area.
let's hear your story.
Yeah, we're on the flats area for 7 days, and we're seeing some bulls, some that are maybe just on the edge of being legal or not, and it seems like the guides don't want to tell you unless there's just like absolute confidence. I don't know, 50 inches is kind of an arbitrary number. Like, is that 50? Is it 49? Is it 58? It's hard to say. So he was like, "Oh man, those are close." We weren't seeing many, so we decided to move. So we drove the Argos on the morning of the 8th day back to the base camp, which is actually where we flew into on a helio in a little backcountry strip, pretty small strip. And then we got equipped to go set up a spike camp. We were going to go up further into the mountains, thinking all the bigger ones have already come past. It's kind of a weird weather year. And so we just started driving slowly down or up this enormous ridge. It's called Iowa Ridge. It's just a huge area. And we're just doing the same strategy, glassing, looking out. Hopefully we can find something. So about our 5th stop that day, it's almost dark. We're thinking about that spot over there is going to be pretty good to set up camp. And then we see 2 big white satellite dishes, and we're like, hey, that one's good. And for us, all the bigger ones that we saw all had cows with them. And so this guy was kind of trying to corral all of
And
his
the
cows.
later in the hunt, I felt like as the hunt went on, we were in that period of the rut where the bulls were getting the cows as you were going, or were your bulls already teamed up with cows when you arrived?
It's hard to say because I just know that the bigger ones that we saw all had cows, and the ones that were smaller did not have cows.
Yeah, because they get their butt kicked.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So we see a bigger one with cows, and he's like, that one's definitely legal. And I also didn't really fully realize this about Alaska, but there's like off-road okay areas where you don't need a trail, nothing. And so he's like, we can cut. At this point, we're in a side-by-side. We ditched the Argo. Felt like we were in a Cadillac. It was like the smoothest ride ever compared to how the Argo rode. But we can go straight down the ridge, which is like a 45-degree angle, just one little finger of the ridge that he could go down. We can get over to that point, and then we could probably walk that last half mile, and then should be right there. So we roughly execute that, and in the time it took us to drive, he moved the cows quite a ways, and we saw a couple of the cows just out in the open, a hair, and he's like, I bet we can rake him in. And so he just starts raking, and he pops out at 600 or so yards, and I start watching him, and I was ready on this hunt to make a long shot if necessary.
You're shooting a 300 Weatherby.
300 Weatherby, 180 Interbond, and so I have my scope on max power, and I just watch him come in, and he's like, don't shoot yet, just keep waiting. Gets to about 400 yards, and I see that at around 300-yard mark, he's going to disappear for quite a while, and so that made me a little bit nervous. Anyway, I told JD, if he turns broadside anytime now, I'm going to shoot. He's like, okay. So right at 300 yards, that moose turned broadside, and at this point, I've been watching him for like 5 or 10 minutes in the scope, and it's like, this is awesome. This is a good moose.
Yeah.
This is a really good moose.
Right.
So it turns broadside. I shoot, and like, you know how you usually hear that impact?
Yeah.
Didn't hear it. I'm like, what was that? And he just kind of like moved like he heard a shot and it started trotting off. And I'm on max zoom, 18 power, and I'm trying to find him again and try to get another shot off. And I see some brown, and I shoot again just before he got out of view because I felt really good about the first shot. And we heard the thwack on the second shot, and he just kind of disappeared around this corner. And he's like, what happened on the first shot? I'm like, I don't know. It felt really good. I'm not sure. I was super stable. I had broken a little spruce tree in half. And when it split, it kind of made like a little fork. And I just set the rifle right on there. It's like a perfect standing, perfect height little bipod.
Yeah, which
monopod at this
you
point.
can't really use bipod. The brush is, usually
crazy.
chest level.
Yeah, you don't know what you're
Yeah.
gonna get up there. So I was stable. I felt good about it. Anyway, we just anticipate maybe he's not dead yet. So we walk way around. We want to force him downhill instead of forcing him further into the thick stuff. So we go further than we think he is, and he ended up not going 30 yards from where he disappeared, and he had piled up. Turns out the first shot was great. Don't know why we didn't hear it. It just went in right where you'd want it to.
It hit
like,
lungs?
Yeah, no, it didn't hit any ribs or anything, but it just went straight in and
No, lungs. Yeah.
yeah, hit lungs, and yeah, that did him in. The second shot wasn't as good. It hit him basically right below the back knee, and like he wasn't going to walk far because it turned him into a tripod for sure. But slowed him down. Man, they're. I remember walking up on this guy. Enormous animal. They're like 9 feet from nose to tail and 7 foot back to. It's unreal.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're big critters, and we're used to seeing them up here, like in the Bighorns in Wyoming. But a Shiras moose versus an Alaskan, like it's two separate critters for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You can't even. Like if you're gonna do a grip and grin picture, you can't hold their head up.
No.
Like you gotta find the right stick to cut off to prop up under the antler. They're so big. There's no chance at even moving him whole.
That's cool. It's long, 8 long days to get them. I mean, because we shot them then. I mean, I didn't get mine till day 7. So I mean,
You start to lose the confidence really quick after the midpoint of the trip.
I think when I got up day 6, I was kind of.
He was a little grumpy.
I got a little grumpy. And then I went and sat in the field for 12 hours, and we're like, the big one's going to come out.
I kept reminding him that we were here to have fun.
Oh, stop. Man, I was having a good time. I was having a great time.
Pep talks.
We'd actually seen a lot of smaller bulls, but bulls the first 3 days. We'd seen a lot of bulls.
Yep.
And we called in the first few days, 5-6 bulls to like 50, 60, 70 yards.
Yep.
Which is super fun, but kind of that probably not legal.
Just right at the line.
Yeah, not a shooter on the first few days, and
Right.
certainly not. Some of them were obviously too small.
Yeah.
And then we went a couple days and just didn't see moose.
Yeah.
And,
Except Grandpa.
Or
I saw Grandpa moose.
oh yeah, you want to tell them about Grandpa Moose?
Oh, Grandpa Moose. I don't think
Grandpa, yeah. My guide, we like to move more than Adam's guide. So he would sit for 12 hours. We would usually only go sit maybe an hour and a half and then try another place. Our mentality was, well, we have to bump into them. The more places we can go, the more chances we have to bump
Right.
into them. So we got to this one little lake, and we were probably there almost an hour and a half. So we were just about to leave, and always right before you leave, you do one last kind of
You have
rake,
to.
one
You have
last
to,
rake,
yeah.
right? So he did one last rake, and within seconds, this bull came right out, and I said, "Oh my gosh, there's a bull right there!" And so I'm looking. He's probably maybe 200 yards, and you see one enormous paddle, and my guide's like, "This is the one.
This is a big
This is
bull.
the one." All of a sudden, I'm like, "Hold on,
There's not-
wait a minute." There's not two paddles. So it was one enormous paddle. This guy was a grandpa. And you always ask for
Which
the
nothing-
grandpa.
Nothing, no offense to any grandfathers
No, no,
listening
no,
to the
no.
podcast.
No, that's
Yeah.
amazing. But you always, my kind of tagline off of this is, be careful what you ask for, because you kind of want
Sure.
the older brother, not necessarily the grandpa.
Yeah.
When you're wanting meat and whatever. Anyway, so one huge paddle, the other one looked like a fork of an elk coming out. So he had some sort of injury or something
Wild.
wild. So I'm texting Adam and I'm like, well, he's kind of cool
On the
because
inReach, obviously
Yeah.
no phone service,
Yeah.
but we both had inReaches.
yeah, and of course it took him a lot longer to respond, but I'm like, he's kind of cool. I'm kind of thinking about it. As we are calling, we're just calling back and forth, and this moose comes probably within 20 feet. But as he's coming closer, he's got like a green tinge to him,
Oh, he's maybe not healthy either.
and he's dragging his back feet.
They have video of it.
Oh, really?
It's the nastiest looking thing you've ever seen.
And all of a sudden, Adam gets back. He's like, "Yes, shoot it!" And I'm like,
But it was like
no.
a 20-minute delay by the time it goes
yeah.
to outer
Sure.
space and back.
So he's,
Sure.
I ask him, should I shoot this? By the time he gets back and says yes, I say, no, never mind, But it was hilarious. And we thought he might have been sick because my guide was like, well, load your rifle just in case he charges us. Like he was
He's
just,
that close.
yeah, he was
Oh, wow.
20
yeah,
feet,
and we're
20
like,
feet
well,
from us.
it might not look that great on the wall, and it might not be that good on the dinner table. So at that point,
We passed.
Yeah.
But it was super fun.
we
super
kept
fun.
joking that we could probably go back at the end of the week and we
Get
wouldn't even have
Harold.
to shoot him. We could just find him. He'd be
You
dead.
just scare him. Yeah.
We kind of always said, yeah, it was Grandpa Harold throughout the rest of the week. But we could always go back and
Find
go
Harold.
to Grandpa's pond over there and see
Grandpa's
what happens.
Pond. Yeah, that was one of our spots. But it was fun to see a moose so close, and he was so wanting to interact with someone. I don't think anyone else would fight him. So, of course, he had no cows either.
But
Yeah, he didn't have any cows. It was very surprising.
Yeah.
one massive paddle, though.
Yes.
One
Massive,
enormous paddle.
massive
The only other
paddle.
time that we saw up till day 7 saw a bull that was a class above kind of the probably not legal, maybe barely legal moose was probably day 3 or 4. We walked into one area. As we were walking, I saw the two paddles like in the willows. And you can just immediately tell when you've been glassing a lot of smaller bulls. It's kind of like if you're doing bucks or elk or things that we're used to down here in the western, lower 48 as they call it, we just all of a sudden I saw the two paddles and I just went, that's even
it.
just the height of the paddle, it felt
Yeah.
like twice as long and
sure.
tall. And so we just immediately went, wow, that's it. By the time we set down our packs to pull up our binos, and you saw it too, and then my guide saw it all with our naked eye,
Yeah.
several hundred yards. And by the time we went to get our glass, never saw the bull again.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah,
That-
rigged.
just a glimpse.
He left, just got a glimpse. And so we kind of had gone back there, but we all could see with our naked eye, like that was a
That
large
was
bull.
big.
Never saw him again.
And there actually wasn't
man.
sign
So-
in that place. They actually
Yeah.
think he was just moving
He was probably
through.
going through because what would happen is
Yeah.
we'd go to a place and you could tell if there'd been bulls in there doing their things. There'd be wallows. There'd
Yeah,
be
sure, scrapes.
There'd be
and-
scrapes all on the trees. Of course, bunch of sign everywhere. And so it was, you could tell if there'd been moose doing their thing there or not. And there hadn't been there. So he might have just been traveling through, caught wind of us. We kind of weren't expecting where he was at, so we probably jumped him. But we'd seen that, and then somebody else, and the guide's buddy, somebody had seen this big old moose. So day 6, we went, and that's when I sat out there for 12 hours. And there was one cow out there, literally ate 4 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, and it was the fattest moose cow I'd ever seen. Like, this thing was twice as big as everybody else.
That was Margaret. I had Harold, and he
ate
had Margaret.
and ate.
Yeah.
We were wanting to match these two up. She ate, and she, like, her belly's almost dragging on the ground. She just ate. So I had to look at that dumb cow all day. And
she's solo. No one around her.
Yeah. In the morning, there was another younger cow out with her. Looked very skinny next to her. And then she didn't come back out in the afternoon. So we were there all day. I think we went down to the shore, met up with these guys. It took about a 45-minute break. That's it from that area, because we just knew that there had the day before been a large bull sighting near that area. And so we thought we'd go down there. And so into day 6, came back, hour 15 boat ride. You get back real late. I mean, we're eating dinner. We're average going to bed 10:30, 11 o'clock, and in our wall tent, we're getting up at dark and getting out of there. And so, once you've done that 6 long days in a row, you start to get discouraged. So we're like, the season ended after day 9, so we knew we had 3 more days, day 7, day 8, day 9, to get 2 bulls on the ground. Yeah. And it's a half a day to a day to cut up a bull and get it out of there. So, I might have got a little discouraged, just a little bit discouraged.
For sure.
So I went to bed.
We kind of felt like at that point, if we could tag one moose, that we would just call it ours. It didn't matter.
It's a together moose.
Yeah.
And so
we're like, that would be success
at that point.
We're
like, the next one's got 4 brow tines is dead. We told our guy that. We got up day 7. Next legal one. Because look, we got 2 tags, and so we could get a legal one, then hunt for a big one. We'll see what happens. Yep. And obviously, the end of the story will show that it was, far exceeded our expectations. And, you get those kind of highs and lows. And obviously, I mean, whatever, any moose over 50 inches is a great moose. And so we went out day 7 and went back to the area.
And we were separated at this point.
Right. Yeah. So we after about day 3 or 4, we'd hunted together, but to increase our odds, we would separate. We'd be in the same area of the river because we pretty much had access to one boat. And so we'd drop somebody off. We'd go down the river and kind of go back and forth that way. Mm-hmm. So they dropped us off at one spot, the same spot we'd been at for 12 hours. Went that next morning again. Was there hour or 2. Mm-hmm. You guys had heard some raking and some cows where you went, didn't see that bull. So morning 7.
So did you hear cows calling?
Yeah.
We never heard one.
No.
Never heard
one.
That's
because you were up in the forest.
So. Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, we heard cows all the time. Yeah. And in fact, that one morning we went in and waited 12 hours. We heard cows kind of all over the place. So, we'd hear cows, you'd hear grunts, and you'd hear rakes.
Yeah, we heard lots of grunts, but never a cow doing that. Is that a moan? What is that? I don't know.
It's a cow call. Do you want to hear it? Have you heard my cow call?
We heard it.
No,
I've not heard it the one time. I think I remember.
Okay, I just didn't know about the cow call. So anyways, then they picked us back up. It was mid-morning, about 10:30, day 7. What do you want to do? Well, there's a spot about a mile away downriver from where I'd waited the 12 hours and waited that morning. And we'd gone there the 2nd day, I believe. There's a big beaver lodge out in the middle, a really big clearing, like a lake they call it, but some spots are grass and some spots are 3 feet deep and you can't tell. Right. So they all call them lakes. And so it's probably 700 to 800 yards across, kind of big circle.
Super marshy.
Beaver lodge on one side. Okay. You can access it about 200 to 300 yards off the river. You bust through the woods. You go out there near this area. And we said maybe that bull or some others, because the bull we'd seen, I said, day 3 or 4, that big one, that was probably only 2 miles upriver. And so they're moving around, getting their cows, bumping people out. They're getting bumped. Sure. Things are happening. So we did find places that we saw sign that was real fresh. And sometimes we go back and we'd still see it fresh. And then we'd go back there 3 days later, and we'd even put some things out to kind of know if they'd been through there and back into their wallow. And we'd go, they weren't there for 3 days. And we kind of knew that they weren't in that same area. So we're really kind of tracking them. So anyways, it was about 11:30 in the morning. They dropped us off down by this beaver lodge of this probably 700-yard around little lake. Mm-hmm. And then they said they're going to go back up. I think you guys were going to go to where I can't remember. Oh, you were going to go to the other one where that lake kind of bent around, horseshoed. So anyways, they're going to go somewhere. They dropped us off 11:30. We walk out. We get 200 to 300 yards out. As soon as we bust out in this lake area, we see a dinky little bull, and he was actually at the place I'd waited 12 hours a day before. We think he was a really, really, really small bull, and had 2 cows with it. So I don't know how he did that.
Yeah. Right.
You know, whatever. Or
Size of the dog in the fight, something like that.
Yeah.
Fighting the dog. Yeah.
So we went out there and we go, okay, wow, there's bulls moving around, and we said we think this is that little bull from a mile up. So maybe a big bull that'd been around there and been sighted. Maybe he's around here. Well, right as we were sitting there, and this little bull and these cows come less than 100 yards in front of us, and we're behind these willows, we just hear this giant raking over to our left, not more than 200 yards away.
Buddy.
It raked first. And so you're like, whoa, game on. And we're kind of out in the middle. So we got back behind some willows because we're like, it'll literally come out of the trees and we'll go, hey. So we got back behind some willows. And then we were about 80 to 100 yards from the clearing where he would have come out of the willows into a gap. And so we get back there and we start raking. He's raking. And you can kind of, once you've heard them, especially the guys, you can tell if it's a bigger bull as well by the way they're raking, the aggression of it, and kind of even the tone of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, he's coming at us. And so I chambered one, and I was using a new Weatherby cartridge yet to be released. I was Yeah. Then everybody's going to ask about it in the comments and then say what it is. So, yeah, it was a new 22. We're coming out. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. So I got back there and chambered it up, kind of a new rifle too. So I couldn't really show the rifle any pictures, like new rifle, new cartridge. But that's my job, product testing. So I was out there working hard.
Adam doesn't hunt with existing products pretty much ever, it seems like.
It does seem like. Yes. You got to try it out, man. Field tested.
That's right.
Endurance proven. So I got behind some willows, and then, it was belly to chest high grass. And so I'm like,
Persons or moose?
Sorry, what was that?
Was the grass
The
chest?
grass, my height, I'm saying.
I guess there's a
And
moose
so
at
all
waist.
that to say, I wasn't going to get down in any position. I was standing up, and then I leaned on a little willow branch that wasn't bigger around than my pinky. And I'm
Right.
like, this is the best rest I've ever had. And it was kind of the only thing sitting there. And so I'm on this thing, and it's kind of wobbling. And, but sure enough, we start to see the antlers. And as soon as he rounded the corner and he's kind of behind some willows, Guy and I just looked at each other and we went, nodded yes.
Game
You
time.
could just tell, you didn't have to count the brow tines when you see a bull of that class.
Yep,
You
for
just
sure.
look and you go,
that's it.
that'd be a yes. And so never fully really examined him, because as soon as he came out and the front part of his body, kind of right past his shoulder, came past the willows, and then the back half of his body was in there, and he just stood there. I just put one in behind the shoulder, and he just stood there. And again, I'm used to elk and deer, and there's usually some running and scurrying and some
Right.
things that happen.
He just stood there.
Just stood there for about 30 seconds. And then I said, okay, if he takes another step, I'll just pop him another one. Stood there 30 seconds, and then it was like, timber.
He just collapsed.
Boom, just
No
collapsed.
way.
Yeah.
In like perfect photo position.
Yeah, it was like, it was just, I mean, it was 87 yards. Not like it was the hardest shot of my life at the
Sure.
largest animal I probably
Sure.
ever shot in my life,
Yeah.
and one of the closest I've ever shot in my life.
Don't necessarily need sub MOA for that shot.
No, if
but
you screw that one up, like, you don't deserve you have your name on the gun anymore, I guess, at that point. But so I was there, and so sure enough, he just tipped over. And I'd heard that, I know that moose do that a lot instead of kind of running. I mean, I've given elk a good heart shot, and they'll go, boo, run,
Yeah.
run out of batteries and fall over. But they just kind of sat there, and then he tipped over. So that was about noon on day 7, and went up and ended up in reaching them. And so Brenda and Trevor came over.
All of a sudden, Adam was having the best week of his life.
yeah,
it was
it just
amazing.
changes like that.
It was amazing.
For sure.
Everything was positive. Like he'd
all
get up and
good.
make that fire in the morning for
Yeah.
me. There was never
I
a
always
complaint.
made a fire in the wall tent for her. Yeah.
And he kept saying, you saw my bull. It's a really good bull.
It's a
Yeah.
solid bull.
So
So
my
pretty.
bull, if you had seen pictures, it measured about 62 1/8 wide, but who's counting? It was really
Someone was.
symmetrical. The paddle width on the one side was just really wide. It was just, it was that like really just beautiful bull, like everything about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was like, if it popped out, I mean, at that point, it could have been some dinky, ugly thing, and I still probably shot it as long as it was legal at that point. And so I was just like, oh, wow. Like, and that's what happens. We've all been there hunting, and you get to that moment of discouragement. I mean, I was mule deer hunting this last week, got discouraged, and then shot the biggest buck of my life. So those things, you know, that is hunting, and I experience the highs and lows more than anybody, right, Bren? She's a little more stable than me, and I'm like, oh, the bucks are gone. It's hot, and it's a full moon, and I do that all the time. And then, oh, well, there's a big one. I'll shoot that one. So
Never know what's going to happen.
So these guys showed up. We did a bunch of photos and some video stuff, and it was super fun. And here's one of the crazy things. So we go to cutting up the moose, and as you well know, it takes a while, and it's
takes
large.
a long time. Yeah.
Everything's large about it. And in Alaska, you have to cut all the meat off. You have to pack everything out, including the ribs and things that we're not used to needing to do by law here in the lower 48.
It looks like a wolf's been done with it.
Yes.
When
Yep.
you leave that carcass.
That's correct.
For sure.
Yep. They cook everything. So in the midst of doing that, here's what's kind of cool. Brenda had a tag. It was into day 7. We had day 8 and 9. We said, or that was midday through 7. Maybe she can do some hunting this evening, depending on when we get done, and then she'll have day 8 and day 9. Well, we're there hour into cutting this thing
Yeah,
up.
maybe an hour.
Middle of the day. It's afternoon, 1, 2 o'clock. All of a sudden, I look across that 700-800-yard field, and I go, there's a bull
Oh, right there.
coming right at. We rake. He's like, oh, I'll probably go over there.
Everyone
There's-
keeps
perfect.
cutting.
There's 4 of us cutting up moose. We're down low below the grass.
You're
get
not
s-
exactly trying to hide.
I
We'd
get
get
set
up
up
every
on
few minutes.
sticks. I get set up on sticks. I'm like, well, we'll see if he
And
comes
we realized
closer.
he's actually genetically just a really pretty bull. Wasn't legal and he was too small.
Okay.
We did that 3 times that day in the
No
period of
way.
5 hours.
Yeah.
Just right there.
A couple hours later, there's a bull.
Well, let's try to see what he does.
Just
Comes
loping
across the
through.
field. It's amazing.
They look like they're so slow.
Yes.
And like while you're watching them move, they just move so slow. But because they're so big,
Yeah.
they're
covering a
cruising.
lot of
They're moving fast.
area.
So
Yeah.
we thought for a while, we're like, well, this is going to be easy. We're just going to cut moose right here, and then we're going to go over there and cut up moose. It ended up we didn't see a legal bull, but we had 3 bulls come.
Oh, but you got
at us.
excited 3
Got,
times.
Yeah.
and each
It
time
was fun.
came
It
within
was fun.
60 to 80 yards.
Wow.
Yeah, could have been easy.
All the way over.
And there's
Easy
4 of
shot.
you
The
just
wind
like
was-
going to town.
The wind
cutting
was
up.
perfect.
We started getting bored of the little moose coming in. You know, we're like, oh gosh, we got to get this thing cut up. You know.
So the other interesting thing in Alaska is that you can't debone it. It's got to leave the field on the bone,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
Which, how much does one of those rear quarters weigh? I
A lot.
I don't know.
150, 175.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I'd guess about 150, but
Yeah,
I'm just throwing
man.
that out there.
it was hard. Yeah, I was between
Yeah.
150 to
Yeah.
could be 2. I don't know. Like it
Sure.
took
Yeah.
everything I had to lift the thing up. And
Yes.
it's like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much. If people hunt Alaska a lot, and it happened before when I did DIY with another resident, like their hunting is strategically how far it is from a river,
Yeah.
or a road, or
You gotta be
whatever,
Or a
Get it out.
vehicle.
because it's different. I mean, we've all packed out elk, and it's like, okay, we can pack out elk, and that's a large animal, but it's not a moose, and you can debone it in the field.
And
And
you have
can't
to take
debone
everything.
the moose in the field, so and you have to
Brisket,
take everything, and
neck,
it's larger. So you end up
ribs.
packing out,
All of it.
Everything.
a lot of stuff.
For sure.
So we got all that stuff down to the boat, got back to camp super late that night, had a big celebration, and then we got up date and had 2 days to try to fill Brenda's tag.
Yeah.
So
So you're Brenda, so you probably weren't as discouraged on day 8 as Adam was
she's
on
like,
day 7.
I'm just having a great time. I think that
I
night
was.
she said, you know what, Adam? I was so relaxed. I was sitting out there and I watched the leaves fall off the tree. And I was like, wow, we're watching the seasons change. And I'm like, where's the big bull at? Who's the big bull? We need a bull. Give me
Well-
the bulls.
I don't know ever in my life, except maybe my African safari, but I was a very new hunter. So I did an African safari in 2016 with some ladies.
Right.
That was probably the longest hunt of my life, which
Okay.
was like 9 or 10 days of hunting. But it was a lot of action.
Yeah.
This was 9 days of not a lot of action, like sitting and watching and waiting. So I had thought through every employee, every child I have, my dog, like the next presentation I had to make, or what I had thought through everything there was to think through. And my life has never been that quiet. So I got to the point where I literally was watching the leaves fall and seeing like the beauty of that. And that was that was so awesome.
Isn't that touching?
It is.
Yes.
It was
really is.
amazing. It was so.
I feel
It
bad
was.
now. I'm just, where's the balls?
Yeah.
It was just like, I don't know. Our modern worlds are very busy, and I just
no
was
doubt.
not busy. It was wonderful. So,
I don't have that gift.
yeah, I knew
My baby
if it
don't
was
either.
supposed to happen, if it was supposed to happen, it was going to happen. And if it wasn't supposed to happen, it wasn't supposed to happen. So that was cool. I thought, well, let's just keep doing what we're doing because this was fun.
Well, and she knew because I'd been on 2 previous moose hunts. She knew. She knew it'd be harder to go home without me. It'd be harder to go home and live with me without
Yeah,
shooting one than
yeah.
for her to not shoot one.
For sure.
It's like, it's worth the sacrifice for Adam to get
I
his.
told her
For
actually it
sure.
was last night or this morning. I think this morning we were getting ready for work, and I said, you know, if you were there with me, because I always say, hey, I want to give you the good, kind of easier shot, really set you up. If you were there with me on that day 7 and saw that bullet 87 yards, I said, I'd totally had you shoot it. She's all,
I
no,
called
you
it.
wouldn't.
I called it.
Like, no
I said, that
chance.
is
I'm
no
like,
way.
well, you'll never know. So I can say that I would have let you shoot
Brenda,
it.
hold my water bottle. I got to shoot this.
Hold my water.
Yeah.
So
it happened how it was supposed to. So
yeah. So
that
then
was good.
we got up day 8, and it was at that point like, let's revisit all
What time did you get back? Day 7? Was it
late.
pretty late?
It was
like
dark.
later
Well,
than
we
later
don't,
than the other
no,
days.
No,
Not
no,
so much?
because I shot at noon.
Okay,
I
yeah.
we got back 8:30 to
Maybe,
9.
Yeah.
Okay.
8:30 to 9, and that's right about depending because see we were losing 7 minutes a day of daylight.
Mm-hmm.
So by that point, I mean it was 45 minutes to an hour later, but there was 8:45 to 9 was about kind of the latest you could shoot.
Yep.
Probably about that point.
Oh.
So
Before we move on to day 8.
Yeah.
Because the night of day 7, we got a killer show of Northern Lights.
was it that
Oh my
night?
gosh. Yeah. It was the night you.
Yeah.
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 It was
We
unbelievable.
went out, and the 2 residents that we were with had lived in Alaska their whole life, and they'd never seen Northern Lights like this.
I mean,
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you saw the
rainbow
pic.
dancing all over
Yeah, I
the
did.
sky. It
I
was
found out an
unreal.
iPhone 11 with no filter or anything. You just go out there and shoot it. It's like, it's worth it if you're going to see the Northern Lights. Like, the camera was like, I don't even know. It was like amazing.
Yeah.
We
So-
caught
Beautiful
a
day.
very tiny glimpse of the Northern Lights one night. It was only half cloudy that night, and it looked like there was some cool stuff happening in the clouds, but we had so much cover we couldn't
It
see
was
it.
dancing. It,
It
was
was
rainbowy.
crazy.
It was green. The photo I got showed it
It,
mostly green.
it looked like a painting. Like there was so much green in
Later,
there.
I was super bummed the next day. You're right. That's why it was day 7, because I wish I'd have gone out there and set up my moose on the shore. So I'd have had the moose antler silhouetted with it.
Actually, it was like
But it was like
That'd be
midnight or
cool.
something.
it was like midnight.
So-
He gets up and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh." He goes out there. Gosh darn it! And he tried to go back out to see if the Northern Lights
and then
were
the
there
Northern
to
Lights were gone.
reposition.
Yeah, I went out there in the cold, got on my wall tent, my sleeping bag, put on my pants, and got out there. So then day 8 was up, and we were like, hey, at this point, we've hunted everywhere, and then
Yeah.
it's like,
Repeat.
where has the most freshest sign? Let's go to those places. So that morning, we ended up total, I think, going into repeat ones, moving around the lake, 6 to 8 locations.
I think 8.
Oh,
I think
really?
it was
So
closer
y'all were
to
moving
8
a lot.
on
Just-
day
just-
8. At
We
that
had to
point,
bump.
we're
You
like,
gotta hustle.
look, we don't have enough time to sit and camp on one field unless we're real confident.
You got to
Yeah.
hustle.
Let's
Yeah.
get in. Let's rake. In a half hour to an hour. Don't hear something. Let's move on.
Go.
Yep.
And so-
the whole morning we saw nothing, right? We saw nothing in the morning, up through lunch.
0.
0.
No,
We're like,
we actually didn't see No, we
I
didn't
don't
see
even
moose
think
till
we
the
saw
evening.
a cow or a
No.
bull.
So
Yeah.
went back and had lunch. Got skunked in the morning,
Yeah.
and then in the afternoon went out to a few different spots just with Brenda's guide, and got to a spot in the evening, and ended up after hunting there about an hour or two, heard a bunch of cows, and the cows were pretty much teamed up with bull at that point. So we thought
This
Must
is
be
good.
a bull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
calling them in. Cows are getting closer. We heard cows. Do you want to hear what a cow sounds like?
No.
Yes.
So then these cows started getting closer, and then all of a sudden, one pops out, and we're like, oh, is it the cow? Is it the bull? We
No, it's a bear.
pull up our binos. It's a giant black bear.
And you had a bear tag.
Less than 200 yards. We both have bear tags. So I pull out my gun. I'm like, I want to shoot a bear. But I knew that it would screw up her dream moose hunt. So, being the,
He's like, well, Bren, do you want to shoot a bear? I'm
being the
like,
naturally
no, I
good
want to shoot a
hunting
moose.
partner I am, Like, you shoot, that's a really big. It was a very, very large black bear.
But it's not as
so-
big as the biggest black bear I've gotten.
Brenda's shot it
She's
over.
got a big
She's got a
black bear.
black bear bigger than mine.
So-
So she's like, oh, that thing's dinky. It's probably only 6'6". So
Oh man.
so it came in. It was upwind of us. It came in to probably about 80 yards.
Yeah.
We actually had guy out his pistol. I had my rifle out. We were ready.
You're ready. Yeah.
Just in case we needed to shoot the bear.
Yeah.
Well, then we
But
let the bear go
definitely
by.
Definitely blew
And
that
then all of
hunt.
a sudden, when that bear got upwind from the cows,
No more
we didn't hear
cows.
the cows anymore. So the bear blew it, and we didn't shoot a bear. And
Man,
we're
that's
sitting
crazy that you were like, nope, I'm not shooting that bear.
there. Well, she knew it'd take the rest of that night, and maybe then a little bit the next
Sure.
morning, and
Then
know,
I
getting,
was-
getting the
yeah.
whole thing out, and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So we're like, well, crud. Now we didn't shoot a bear. Now the cows are gone. We got an hour of daylight left on day 8. Tomorrow's day 9. And
So we
it's
kind
season
of,
closer.
yeah, we kind of looked at each other like, like it was kind of, that was the low point of day 8.
Because we heard cows, saw
Yeah,
a bear.
he wanted
everything
to
left.
shoot the bear, and my guide really wanted one of us to shoot the
Yeah,
bear.
he
And then
just wants
I
you to
was
shoot
like,
something.
I don't want to shoot the bear, and he's like, what?
Well, we knew it.
Yeah.
We knew it'd risk that. So we basically said, let's go back to the first place where we were in the morning, and let's poke in there because it's the largest field you can see, over 1,000 yards across. And we'd seen sign there. We'd seen 2 to 3 little bulls there throughout the week. It was kind of our number one go-to spot. It was only 20 minutes from camp, and it was the biggest.
Right.
And we said, there's got to be bulls moving through there. Let's go poke in there. By the time we get there, we're going to have less than a half hour of light. We'll just see what happens.
Yep.
So
Earlier that day, Adam said, I hate this place. It's cursed. And I was like, don't say that, but then he wanted to go back there. But
well, at that point, it was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
what do
was
we do?
kind of the only
We just
other
had to take
option.
advantage.
Only to your last spot.
So we jammed down, just literally trying to run out these trails, get down the boat. We're going through a lot of brush. We zoom over there. It's probably 10-minute drive only from where we were at, the boat,
yeah.
across the river.
But you're burning daylight. You're like,
We get out. We walk in there, look across this field, and down at the end of the field, there's probably at that point 3 cows.
3 cows and a couple cats.
good sign.
Didn't see a bull. Good sign.
Yep.
So we go get in our usual spot that was so matted down around this bush because we'd like lived there off and on over the week.
For sure.
Like it was like our home away from
You
home.
Stash some cookies over there for your future
Could've.
self. Yeah.
Could have. Yep. So anyways, we called, and all the cows looked towards the brush, the willow
Like
trees.
not towards us.
Yeah,
They
that's a
look-
good sign too.
they're
We
looking
we're
figured
like,
towards
that out.
daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's this gonna do?
Another cow comes out with Big Bull right on her tail. So he was basically kind of rounding them up. She had wandered off, and he was like, get you back
Yeah.
into my group. As soon as we saw him, he was probably 500 yards.
It's about 5.
500 yards. We knew he was big. Of course, my guide's like, wait, count the brow tines. And we're like, 1, 2,
I'm like,
3.
he's big enough.
There's a bunch of
If-
junk down there.
It
Can't
was
really
a little
tell.
bit weird. If you see your bull, you'll know why. There was kind of just points everywhere. It was funky. He had stuff dropping everywhere. So we just from 500 yards, we didn't pull up a spotter. Pretty much they don't use spot where we were. We don't use spotting
No,
scopes
we
because
were. Yeah.
because you're just not looking very far. This is about as far as you'd look in our area. Is 500 yards almost. So.
Yeah.
Yep. So wind is bad, going right towards him. Doesn't seem to care at the moment. But
Yeah, it was probably going 12 miles an hour right at our back, right towards them.
yeah, so we're like, not great. I didn't really want to shoot him at 500 if I didn't have to. And every bull up until this point, we've been able to call in to at least 100 yards. So we were like, oh, he's going to come walk right towards us. So we started calling, and he would call back, rake back, but then run over to his cows.
And,
So-
and he'd
No
kind of
kidding.
circle them. And
Yeah.
he kept corralling them in, and he's basically going, yeah, you want a piece? You come over here.
Yeah, I'm not going to you. You got to
Not
come
co-
to me.
I'm not coming over there. I'm not leaving my cows. And so he'd scrape, look our way, round up his cows. And he did that,
Just
and there was not a lot of
he's
light.
grandstanding a little bit. Like,
Yeah. So
you're coming over here.
Yeah, so 5 minutes of that, and we're like, okay, now we got maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes of light. So I set up, I had a camping stool and bipod, or
One of those little super lightweight ones you bring around.
yeah, so I
Oh,
was
yeah,
sitting
sure.
down.
Little tripod type
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
correct.
which worked out good. I was sitting down, could get an elbow on a knee. I told my 22-year-old guide, I'm like, get over here. And he's like, what? I'm like, get your arm under my shoulder. And he's like, He's all feeling awkward. And of course, he doesn't have ear protection. So he's trying to like call out MOAs, plug his ears, and is under my shoulder. So
Right.
he's, multitasking a lot. I guess we snuck up a tiny bit.
Well, he kind of went further, and he'd go in and out of the willows. When he did that, we ended up trying to sneak a little bit further, but then he was getting further. So finally we got to that 470-ish mark.
Yep.
We'd gone a couple hundred yards, but he'd gone further, and I'm like, I think he's faster than us. They're grazing a little bit.
Right.
Yep.
His cows were grazing. He was kind of following them. So,
and they're out in the middle of this lake.
and we had 10 minutes of shooting light at this point, probably.
It looked like he was in about 3 inches or 4 inches of water. You know, they're long legs.
They're so long.
Yeah, so he's in a little bit of water, but we're not too concerned about that. And so took the shot. I told Adam, back me up just in case I make a bad shot or we need another
Right.
round in him. So he was over on a willow. I shot him maybe, what'd you say, 6 inches back from maybe ideal.
He was facing to the left.
We had a little bit of
It
wind.
was kind of good shot a little bit towards the hind.
back.
Yeah.
I didn't calculate. I think it was quartering. The wind was, I think the wind drifted at 500 yards. It would have been about
Sure.
where the wind should have gone. So I think she made
Yeah.
a great shot. I didn't call her wind for, so I take blame.
It's a big target.
Yeah,
It's a big target.
It was quartering from behind. Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, his rump splashed in the water. Ended up being more than 3 inches of water, to say the least.
3 feet.
Enough to make a splash.
Enough to
big
like
splash.
a cannonball.
Like 1,500 pounds.
So
in the
Big
water.
Timmy jumped off the diving board and did
Mm-hmm.
a cannonball.
Yeah, and you're trying to read
Yeah.
a good book on the side of the pool.
Yeah, it was rough. So his head kind of went down. I tried to get him in the neck, kind of just shot through the meat of his neck. So
Okay.
it didn't do much damage there.
He was kind of moving his head at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, and then he kind of lurched up a tiny bit, so I saw his shoulder and then got him on that last one. His rack then really splashed. And at that moment, my guide looked at me and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have told you to shoot. He's in the water." And he just had this like look of dread. And I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is great.
Awesome.
I'm like, I'm all excited.
pumped.
I'm
Sure.
super pumped. He is like,
He's worried.
he's really worried.
Like
He's really,
visually, like he's
is-
concerned.
Yeah, he's very concerned. And he's texting the master guide, and the master guide's like, "You shouldn't have shot him in the water." And I think they're just thinking through how long of a process this is going to be. I'm like, I don't
We've
care.
taken days to pack elk. Yeah, we do.
I'm like-
Yeah.
I take Brent on this kind of stuff all the time. We're like, whatever,
We'll
get done.
figure it out.
We'll get done.
It'll be fine.
We'll get done.
So we got over to the moose. I was super excited just to go see him because we
Just
couldn't.
about dark.
Yeah, just about dark. You lift up. Okay, so we get out to the moose,
Mid thigh.
mid thigh in
with no
water.
waders. Yeah.
You can't see only the tips of his paddles because it's so much underwater. So
my
we lift
gosh.
one side of the paddle up. We're like, "Oh my gosh, look at this, look at this." Then we have to drop that side to even see the other side. Little kickers off everywhere. I was
Super
stoked.
cool.
Awesome move.
I was super
But you're
stoked.
just
Very
you're,
old
You're standing
moose.
way past
Very
your boots
old
in the
moose.
water, so you're.
Oh, we are
and it's
very
not,
wet.
It's not warm water.
No. This is Alaska.
And
yeah.
it's dark almost.
Almost dark.
It's
yeah.
a great recipe.
It's pretty much dark
Yeah.
by the time we're looking at the antlers and checking them out, and we're like, wow, this is an old moose, real mature moose.
Mm-hmm.
Old bull, I mean, it was older than mine. Ended up measuring the same width. Both of ours
Mm-hmm.
are 62 inches, plus or minus like an eighth. So 2 huge bulls. Hers just had
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff going on. Just real old, real cool moose. So
Yeah.
we ended up gutting it.
Well, we pulled
We pulled it because it was floating. You can't pull 1,500 pounds of moose with 3 people normally unless they're floating. So we pulled it
100
50,
feet.
75, I don't know, maybe 100 feet.
That's still probably in,
got
in
it.
deep water.
We got
like
it in. It
mucky
was still
water.
above our
Oh, yeah.
gators. It was still above our gators, mucky water. It was probably right at that below knee, but above the gator line, right about there, just enough to just keep surfing water in.
Wet feet. Yeah.
So we gutted it and kinda,
the water.
in the water, and then laid him on his back. It was pretty dark and late at that point. Kind of used his antlers as a kickstand to just have him kind of belly up, kind of spread eagle, and then had it just where his water was. The water was about an inch away from getting into his cavity.
Yeah.
So we positioned him there for the night and said, well, it's not going to be good to be out here in the dark. There's grizzlies there, hypothermia, everything else, and be in the water. Let's gut him, and we'll come back tomorrow and we'll make a day of it. And so we
did.
we left the bull there and went back and celebrated that night, and came back the next morning. Fortunately, nothing had got to it. Ravens had just about showed up. Ravens, a lot of ravens where you were.
Yeah, they had. I shot near dark also, so
yeah.
we actually got one, the front, rear, and the backstrap off one side, and then pulled the guts out, and then came back the next day.
Yeah.
And the ravens were just getting on it. We got there first thing.
That's about
Yeah.
how we were.
Yeah.
So we got back the next day, and there were 4 of us. But then the guides, his wife and daughter showed up, and because they lived downriver and boated up, and so 6 of us tried to pull them. We even got a rope so that they could be out of the water pulling, and so 3 of us were in the water, still couldn't move it.
They're so heavy.
And so we said, in order to get it out, we're going to need to get some weight off. So Brenda and my guide and I went out in the water, and we brought, because we brought 2 pairs of boots to Alaska. Actually, our lifesaver, we had those Schnee's real high lace boots that are really high. And up till then, were perfect all week. Now, if you're going to be up near waist-high water, it's too high, but they've been amazing boots for Alaska. So shout out to Schnee's Bozeman. But,
Shout out.
But we kept saying that was like the MVP of the new thing we got for this season for the Alaska hunt.
Yeah.
But when you're up this deep, it was in there. So we brought dry boots. So Brenda's guide went and made a fire on the shore. And then we said, me, Brenda, and Sean were just going to go out there and cut up the half of the animal that we were able to roll it that's not in the water.
Yep.
And so we're able to get the front quarter, the rear quarter, probably the back
Part
strap,
of the neck.
Yeah.
and part of the neck. Did all that out there, got it in game bags, got it up on shore. So our boots, our toes were numb by that point. Our feet had been soaking in water. So then we got out, took about a half-hour break, put our feet by the fire that was then lit on the shore.
Well, we
And
pulled it up.
and changed our boots. Oh, before that, we pulled it up and were able to get it on dry ground with 5 of us, and half of it cut up. Then we were able to get it on dry ground. Then we went, kind of did the fire, dried everything out, and then put fresh boots on, and then went back down and cut up the rest of the moose.
Yeah.
So,
I can't even.
and then we were half-mile from the river. So,
so you still then had to pack a half mile to the boat.
many trips. So
Yeah.
So we got back at about dark, and we left in the morning just to go pack it out. So
Wow, so you got to carry some quarters like distance. We were able to drive pretty much a UTV or the Argos up to the moose.
we didn't have wheels; we had a boat.
Well, we had a few family members of the guides that
Yeah.
came.
Yeah,
That
they'd
was
start to
helped.
kind of call some of the local folks and native folks,
That's
and
cool.
they'd show up and help out and stuff
Yep.
like that.
Wow.
So
Yep.
they'll get excited when moose gets on the ground. It's a lot of meat and all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
so it's a good way to thank them is give them some meat. So
Yep. Yep.
Man, what a trip!
It
I
was
left one
great.
part out that I got a new Garmin.
Oh, this is a funny
Garmin
story.
Instinct. Yeah.
Shout out.
I had it's always on silent because we're in meetings and stuff all the time, right? And so I remember when I was going through the setup, you're using the Connect app, and it's like, do you want to have a heart rate abnormality alert? I was like, yeah, sure. And so good. I didn't know what that really meant. Like, oh, if I have a heart attack, it'll tell me. Great, perfect. Well, on the 4th day, I believe it was, we see a really cool moose, maybe somewhat similar to yours. Like, we saw it at 200 yards, and the guide and myself were both just like looking at it, and we look at each other like, what is going on with this guy? And so we started calling him Big Nasty after the fact, just because he just had some weird stuff going on. He wasn't particularly huge. He was just like a weirdo. And in hindsight, my guide was like, I probably should have told you to shoot that sooner. But we're trying to figure out if this is a legal moose. And remember this waiting game that you play, right? So you get there and you just wait. Well, apparently on the watch, if you get to a resting heart rate and then it spikes without any like detectable activity, it'll just start going haywire because it thinks you're having a heart attack. If on mine was set to 120 beats per minute, my resting heart rate's like 60 or high 50s, low 60s. So I got to a rest just standing there. And then within a few minutes of staring at this crazy moose and trying to decide if we're going to shoot it or not, my watch is like vibrating, beeping, meep, 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 meep. Like the guide looks over, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I have no idea."
And you can't
It's
get to it
never-
because it's under 4 layers of jacket.
It's under all the things. It's going crazy. I'm trying to like slap at my hand, trying to make it stop.
The classic buck fever.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's totally got me. Like my heart rate just spiked like crazy.
That's funny.
Just sitting there waiting for something to happen, and then apparently my Garmin
So
thought I had a
you've
heart
since
attack.
disabled that.
I bumped it up to 140 instead of 120 beats per
Okay.
minute. So
Okay.
I don't know at what point a heart attack's a heart attack, but hopefully it's over 140. That was he was 200 yards away, and he was like, "I don't know if that scared it away, but it sure didn't help it come any closer," and it never came closer after that. So, that kind of foiled that stock or whatever weight. Good times.
We've given some shout outs, and it's a trip like that when you're in a lot of wet, a lot of cold. It's definitely good to have gear, and so we're blessed to have a lot of great partners that we work with. That trip like that, man, it just makes it so much more pleasurable and desirable. Brenda usually had all the gear on,
All of it.
it. I could rarely see her skin anywhere, including her nose, because we did a lot of
Lots of
cold boat
layers.
rides and wet and rain.
I think I had 7 layers on top and then 4
Yeah.
layers on
We
bottom.
ran the Cryptic Altitude stuff, that green stuff by Cryptic,
Shout
and
out.
it's just the waterproof stuff. It's that Swiss made fabric, super good. And it held up great, so it's just really good to have really good gear up there, and everything held up. So, and of course the rifles did. Of course. So Brenda brought a custom
Custom Camilla.
Camilla.
Yeah.
It's like the prettiest gun ever built.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Field worn Cerakote.
Maybe we could close on a deep note. Are we landing the plane?
Yeah,
Luke?
we
I know
need to- we need to-
you're running this thing.
Well, I was just about
But-
to say we probably need to land this plane soon.
Well, maybe she can land it talking about what's inscribed on her barrel. She's got this custom
That's perfect.
inscription on this carbon fiber barrel with this two-tone, like, turquoisey. It's like this beautiful thing, and then she has this inscription of 3 words on her barrel.
and it kind of summarizes the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Faith, courage, and gratitude. So it's not easy for me to go out in the field and do these type of things because it's uncomfortable, it's challenging. Keep a good attitude, but those 3 words help me get through a hunt, help me look forward to a hunt, help me remember what's important during the hunt. So,
Faith, courage, and gratitude. There you
Yep.
go.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to say anything else.
Yeah.
Boom.